The basis of dependency lies on core and periphery states. Periphery is known as a third world country, the South, the East, but mostly as labor. Core is known as a first world country, the North, the West, and capital. The core represents a base of power or a point of origin. The periphery represents a surrounding region that is reliant on the core region. The theory is based on the idea that as a state expands in prosperity, it has to absorb things nearby to remain successful. Dependency theory is a theory of how developing and developed nations interact. Dependency theory in a whole is as resources flow from a periphery of poor and underdeveloped states to a core of wealthy states, enriching the latter at the expense of the former. So basically the core, or more wealthy and modernized states, end up using the less fortunate states' land and resources and end up taking over the weaker country's land. Poor nations provide natural resources, cheap labor, a destination for obsolete technology, and markets for developed nations, without which the latter could not have the standard of living they enjoy. Dependency theory originates with two papers published in which the authors observe that the terms of trade for underdeveloped countries relative to the developed countries had deteriorated over time. The underdeveloped countries were able to purchase fewer and fewer manufactured goods from the developed countries in exchange for a given quantity of their raw material exports. This idea is known as the Singer-Prebisch thesis. Dependency theory states that the poverty of the countries in the periphery is not because they are not integrated into the world system, or not fully integrated as is often argued by free market economists, but because of how they are integrated into the system. A dependent state is Brazil, who supports most of its raw materials and agriculture products and has a lot of poverty. Ethiopia exports lots of cattle and has a lot of poverty and malnutrition. Poor countries don't keep their resources for their own people. They end up exporting to wealthy countries instead, so countries that produce food have people who are going hungry. Financially, poor countries owe rich countries money. Countries in Africa have borrowed $540 billion between 1970 and 2002 from wealthy nations through the World Bank and International Monetary Fund, and still owe almost $300 billion. Rich countries keep poor countries financially dependent. As a whole, dependency theory is basically when a rich country is feeding off a poor country's resources and not helping the poor country move up and become better. So a core country example would be of the USA, and I know that the picture is backwards, but it's a core country because it's developed and it's a first world country. And a periphery would be an example of Africa because it's a third world country and it relies mostly on other countries to help them out.